Hey, and welcome to In the Heart of the Vault. I'm super excited. This is my first episode, and I've got one of my incredible friends joining us today. This friend of mine, I was working out today, we've known each other for about 34 years, I think, if I've done the maths, maybe longer, and that is insane to me. She also lives on the Gold Coast in Australia, which you'll get to hear about that story and how that evolved on today's episode. But she's a mama of two beautiful children, Lydia and Matthew. And it's fair to say probably one of the bravest people I know. So Caroline Conias, welcome to my podcast.
Thank you.
How are you feeling?
Pretty good. Pretty good. It's, a little bit nerve-wracking, but
Yeah.
we'll be fine as we go along.
Yeah.
Thanks for asking me.
That's okay. So, for our listeners, if we just explain how we actually met, and I've been actually thinking about this certainly in the last few days. Our paths crossed through an amazing family friend of ours, your best friend, which would have been, gosh, how many years ago do you think?
We go back a long way, don't we?
Yeah.
It's got to be 40 years, is it?
40
30
years.
odd.
Let's go back to when we first met. So I think you were about, say Caroline at the age of 20.
Yeah.
What was life like for you then?
So, I left home at 19. So, at 20, I was living in Manchester. I was working in Manchester, just trying to make ends meet. It was a bit of a struggle at the time, I'll be honest. But
Why was that?
just financially, I think. It was just unexpected that I was living on my own. So, actually, I wasn't living on my own. I was going out with a guy and we ended up living together. He was about 3 years older than me. He went to our school.
Yeah.
We were kind of forced together in a way because we were going out together and we both worked in Manchester. So we got a flat together and we actually lived together for 6 years. So I was 25 when I realised that this guy probably wants to get married and I'm not there.
Not there.
I just feel as though I've got so much more to do first, travelling for a start. And so that's when I decided to leave and then temporarily move back to our hometown. And then, it all happened from there.
When you say all happened from there, let's dive deep into that.
Yeah, okay. Hindsight's such a good thing, but...
Isn't it?
I sort of met someone on the rebound. After splitting up with Ian, I met someone on the rebound. And I'd got my own flat. I was in Saddleworth. I was really happy. I was so happy looking back. I met someone on the rebound. I didn't know him. And I ended up moving in with him and I ended up getting pregnant. And then I soon realised that he was actually quite a violent man.
So let's strip that down a bit. So with him, how long from meeting him? Because you met him in the cafe, didn't you? Did he come in the cafe? Is that how it all?
It was a friend of a friend. Yeah. So there was a couple of friends of mine who'd already met him and said, "Oh, you'd really like him." And I think we may have done. I can't even remember where we first met. It could have been the pub up the road, or it could have been the diner that we have a mutual friend who had the diner.
Yeah.
I can't remember where we first met, but we hit it off straight away. We really hit it off straight away. We got on really well. We were really attracted to each other. In hindsight, I definitely rushed into it. It was too impulsive, and he didn't turn out to be... It just didn't work out.
So how long from when you met him to moving in together? Did you get pregnant first and then you just thought, well, that's the next thing to move in together?
No, we actually moved in together first. Do you know what? I can't even remember how long it was I don't even remember really how long we were together, but I know it wasn't that long. It's all a bit of a whirlwind.
Did you meet his family?
Oh, yeah. But, his family were lovely. I used to get on really well with his sisters. I used to go and visit his mum and dad. mainly his mum, because his dad used to be in the pub, and then I soon found out that that's where he was most of the time. So
did your family like him? Did they
No.
embrace they kind of had that instinct from the beginning?
My mum was so against it. You know, they say that old saying, always listen to your mum.
Yeah.
And I didn't.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't change anything because of, you know, I had my daughter, and so I wouldn't change anything because otherwise I never would have met her and spent the little time that I did with her. But
Yeah.
But she was right. She was so right. I mean, he was just, you know, we were driving from his house to my mum and dad's house, and he jumped out the car halfway there.
What, he was driving?
No, I was driving. He just jumped out the passenger's side. He just couldn't face anybody. He just couldn't. I think he had a bit of a drink problem, and
do you think, what was that? So that was on the way to your parents' house. Do you think it's because, like you said, they know best, so they could probably see through him?
Saw through him, and
but then
he didn't. Maybe, I don't know. He didn't like going out of his comfort zone. He didn't like going out of his little village, and he didn't. You know, he didn't push himself at all. He just was very set in his ways there. And I think it was that. I think, you know, you go over the hill to drop down into Saddleworth and be just like, I can't do it. And just, he jumped out as I was driving.
That's crazy.
I know.
So what were you thinking at that time?
I was thinking he was a nutter, which, I mean, and by this time I'm already really involved, and I think I may have been pregnant then as well. I mean, so, you know, what do? You just try and make it work, don't you? You just try and you think, well, not prove everyone wrong, but just try and make the best of a situation, you know?
Yeah. So how old were you then?
26.
Yeah.
26. So it was within a year of splitting up with Ian.
Yeah.
It was way too soon, but, you know, by this time I was really involved. Obviously being pregnant, and I wanted it to work. I wanted my child to have that family.
So when you found out you were pregnant, do you remember that day?
I don't remember the day, to be honest. It's because it's so much happened from then until for the next couple of years that it's almost like surreal, and it's almost like a bit of a blur. It happened, obviously it happened, and I know it did, and I'll never forget it, and it's made me the person I am today, but I can't remember dates, I can't remember time length, just time scale. I don't remember the day, but I remember being happy that I was pregnant.
Maybe do you think it's like a protection mechanism?
Could be.
Maybe
It could be, perhaps. Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
amazing how the mind works, isn't it?
Well, you block things out. You just block certain things out. I mean, if I could go back, I would have definitely done things differently.
When you told him you were pregnant, can you remember what that looked like?
Yeah, I mean, he already had 2 daughters. They were beautiful girls, absolutely beautiful girls. I got really close to them.
How old were they?
Only young, say 7 and 9. I mean, again, I might be completely wrong. It could have been younger. It might have been 5, but they were young, and they were beautiful. I remember them, beautiful girls. And I remember, we were both happy. We were both really happy. We didn't know what we were having. I think then people just didn't really. I don't know whether you could know then the sex of your baby, but we didn't know.
I wouldn't know.
Yeah.
And no one really did anyway.
No.
Even if there was, I don't remember anyone actually having. Maybe it was almost, I would say, seen as a luxury type. If there was such scans that you could have done. So, what was your pregnancy like?
Pregnancy was perfect up until probably about 30 weeks. I put a lot of weight on. I was massive. And I was still working.
You were super fit prior though, weren't you?
Prior to
Always
that,
been
I was
super
mega
fit.
Yeah. I played basketball most of my life. and I did a lot of aerobics and step. I was just insecure. But when I got pregnant, it kind of all stopped. And
still working full time.
But I was working full time doing photography. I was photographing
That's
children.
right.
Do you remember?
Yeah.
And
you actually got me. I might just on a little side note, humorous, funny side note with that. We were actually talking about this the other day with Evie, and I said I remember I'd had an argument with Dad because I worked with Dad in between college time. I worked at, for our family company, and me and my dad had a big argument, and he kicked me out of the car, and he said, "That's it," and. So I got home, Mum said, you have to go back to work. I said, no. And she goes, no, you're going back. You go back to work, help your dad. Yeah. And I said, I'm not. She goes, well, you need to find a job then. So I got the bus.
Did I get you a job?
I came on the bus and I came straight to the town, and there you were doing your baby shots.
I vaguely remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I come up and I said...
Oh, God.
I don't know, you asked me or...
Was it in Spindles?
In Spindles, yeah. And you said, what are you doing? I said, I'm looking for a job. And you went, I've got a job. I'm like, brilliant, start tomorrow. So I went home and I said to Dad, Mum said, you've got to go back to... I said, no, I've got another job. She's like, oh my God, only you. I said, start tomorrow with Cass. But anyway, then Dad...
Were you helping me? I don't even remember.
Yeah, no. So then what happened was... I think you said, funny. See how you go, knowing what families are like. Yeah. And my dad come home and he's like, I'm so sorry, I was a bit grumpy. And I was like, that's all right. And then I rang you, I said, no, it's not happening. Back to, obviously, up until 30 weeks, you had a great pregnancy. But during that time, was he being the supportive partner? No. Was he, or were his true colours starting to...
He just was at the pub every night after work. He, this is how I remember it. He'll have his own story.
Yeah, of course.
There's two sides to every story. I remember him not being supportive. I remember him being excited about the baby and the pregnancy, but he wasn't there. He was, I'd be at home and I'd be making his tea. It's the old age-old story, and I was that person waiting for him to come home, and he was, and I'm like, he's not home. An hour goes and he's not home. And he was quite abusive. During the pregnancy.
Verbally or physically?
Both. Yeah, I mean, and at the end of the day, we... so I ended up having severe preeclampsia. And cutting a long story short, at 33 weeks, I was admitted to hospital because my blood pressure was sky high. And...
do you think, looking back now, actually being in that situation, I would imagine, and not even being pregnant, but being in that situation is like you kind of, I would say you're in that fight or flight mode.
Yeah.
And then it just becomes every day, it's not it's not something that suddenly just happens. It's something that builds up over time. Yeah. Would that be fair to say?
Definitely.
So, you kind of make allowances. Like you said, him jumping out of the car, you're like, oh, it's because he, you know.
There was so many red flags.
Yeah. But then obviously being pregnant, crazy or not crazy, you go, well, you have hope, I suppose. And
you do. But I mean, I soon realised that this is not going to happen. And we split up when I was pregnant. We split up several times when I was pregnant, and
were you staying at the flat and him leaving, or you leaving and going back to family?
I left. But what happened was, so we got back together, and then I was actually admitted to hospital with preeclampsia. Severe preeclampsia. So the nurses used to come and do the rounds at like 10 p.m. and they'd do my blood pressure, and if it was high, this alarm would go off, and it'd make you even more
stressed.
Oh my
gosh!
So before I knew it, my blood pressure was sky high, and they had me in a wheelchair and they were wheeling me down to have a cesarean, an emergency cesarean
at 33 weeks.
At 33 weeks. I wasn't with anyone. I was on my own because obviously it was at night time, and I couldn't remember my own telephone number. I couldn't remember my mum's number.
No mobile or anything.
No
then?
mobile. No, I didn't have a mobile then. I don't think I got a mobile till I was about 36.
Jesus.
But yeah, I better get one now. Yeah, so before I knew it, I've got this anaesthetist in front of me saying, we need to get you into surgery right now because one of you's going to die.
Oh my
Your
gosh.
blood pressure is so high that people have had strokes with lower blood pressure. I was terrified.
What were you? So you were obviously terrified. Did you feel they were making you feel like, that you're in good hands? Like, were they?
I feel like they almost caused it in a way with all the drama of the alarms going off when they do your blood pressure. And I think if I hadn't have had my blood pressure taken that night, I always wonder, would it have happened, But
then it could have been very much the other way as well.
And, we don't want to, you don't know, do you?
No.
So then I'm being wheeled into surgery, and then I remembered my mum's number, and I'm like, can you please ring my parents? And I don't know what happened after that. They put me under. I had a general anaesthetic, and I remember waking up, and Lydia was in the neonatal baby unit, and I was. I wasn't in intensive care, but I was in a room on my own, and I remember my mum and dad being there, and mum saying to me, and I'd not seen Lydia at this point, and I said.
So you didn't even know if Lydia was a girl or a boy,
No, well, I as they were wheeling me in, they said, "What names have you got?" And I said, "Lydia and Joshua." I shouted out, "Lydia and Joshua." I didn't know. They told me I'd had a girl, and but I'd not seen her. And my mum said, really early on, something's not right with the baby, and I was so out of it that it just didn't really register. And I said, "What do you mean, Mum?" And well, she's being sick and there's blood in it. She just said it was just something wasn't right, and I thought, oh, surely no, it's fine. And so my blood pressure was still dangerously high. They kept taking me down to a ward and then having to bring me back because it kept going up again, And funnily enough, I remember actually going onto a ward.
Was Lydia still in the baby unit?
Yeah. And this was just at a local hospital. And I remember being on a ward, and they'd wheeled me to see her. I'd seen her and I'd just touched her through the, what do you call it?
Like the incubator.
Sorry, thank you. The incubator. I'd not held her at this point.
Oh.
And she just was gorgeous. She had beautiful.
She was.
Just beautiful blonde hair. Just the most gorgeous baby. But so I was with her partner back on the ward, and actually, so my best friend was in visiting, and my partner came in the room and said, in tears, saying something's wrong with the baby and she's going to be transferred to St. Mary's.
How I mean, again, I would imagine that's all a blur, but do you know any kind of time frame between?
It was days.
Days, okay.
It was days.
Not hours. You'd been there.
I think she was like 2 days old.
And you held her. You'd only.
No, it might have been a day old.
Right.
It was.
And to you, when you saw her for the first time, describe that feeling when you saw her. I mean, she was definitely yours, wasn't she? She's just a double of you.
Yeah.
But how was that feeling for you? Did you, was it, because, I've had two natural births, so I couldn't, even imagine, but being rushed in.
I know.
Having this beautiful baby girl, and then waking up, being out of it, still drugged up and all that, lack of sleep, and
because I wasn't with it, so it
would have been so surreal.
It was very surreal, and it was really scary, and very quickly realised there was something wrong, and Mum was right, her intuition was right, and so they were giving her my breast milk, and she couldn't keep it down, and there was something not quite right, and so they were transferring her to a specialist. So I remember going in an ambulance, following her in an ambulance to St Mary's Hospital, and then
Where was St Mary's?
in Manchester.
Manchester.
In Manchester, yeah.
Who's with you in the ambulance then?
I don't even remember. Honest to God,
Don't remember.
It's so long since I'll be completely honest. I don't know when was the last time I actually told this story, because it's not the type of thing. I mean, I like talking about it. I love talking about Lydia. It's obviously brings back a lot of old memories and
Of course.
and heartbreak, but it's actually nice to talk about it. But I honestly can't remember who I was in the ambulance with, but I do remember, I'm sure Mum and Dad were there when I got there, and I'm sure my partner was there. But then we were very quickly introduced to Adrian Bianchi, which was a surgeon. I don't know whether you remember Laura Davis, but she was...
Fully remember Laura Davis, yeah.
She was, I'd want to say like 5.
Yeah, maybe a bit younger, I think.
When it first started.
Yeah.
And she had a very similar medical condition. But with Lydia's, what it was, I do remember this. I remember me being in bed, in my hospital bed, on a room in my own, and my partner being sat there, and Adrian Bianchi, the surgeon, coming in and writing down this diagram of her bowel and her intestines, and trying to explain what's happened, and looking back, him and I were just looking at him
so
blank.
I
remember Adrian Bianchi saying afterwards, months afterwards, he said, I've had that conversation so many times with parents, and I've seen that look on the parent's face, but not forgetting though that I still had high blood pressure and I still wasn't out of the woods myself.
Yeah.
And all this is going on, and I'm thinking,
exhausted,
this is a nightmare.
and just yeah.
So
so what do you remember that conversation, that having that diagram, that and obviously I can relate slightly because I've had those diagrams written, drawn out a lot. And so but in your situation, just given birth, had surgery, blood pressure's through the roof, like mentally exhausted, very surreal.
Yeah.
Where you should be going home with your bundle of joy and just enjoying that first few days and having people rally around you while you bond and do,
Didn't have any of that.
And your milk's just coming on and all
having to
of that.
Express.
Yeah. So can you...
I could have fed the whole ward, to be honest. There was so much milk.
I can imagine you just like
I remember
this.
my sister walking in and going, oh my God. Look at them.
You're like just behind them.
Yeah.
So he was amazing, wasn't he, from memory? Like
he was. He was amazing.
And so what was his title? Like he was a
surgeon, but I think he specialised in...
Was he a gastroenterologist?
Yes, that's probably it. Like, I mean, at the time, I just knew nothing about what was going on.
And you wouldn't? Like,
No,
why would you... You just wouldn't, would you?
Because she had a problem with her small intestine. She had a twisted bowel, so that's what was explained to us. She's got a twisted bowel. We're going to operate and we're going to untwist it, and we're going to see if any of her bowel has lived or died, and we're going to take it from there. And that's basically what he said. So
just... Kaz, sorry. When you were pregnant and you had your normal scans, like your first one, your 12 weeks, 20 weeks, whatever, nothing was picked up in those scans. Nothing. Healthy, measurements all good.
Yeah. So in my mind, I feel as though the preeclampsia and all that stress at the end caused her bowel to twist. But they tell me that it twisted after birth. So, I mean, but who knows? Like, who can know that, really?
It's the chicken and the egg, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I felt like that was so much stress. I've never felt anything like it. I mean, I didn't know whether I was going to survive. And so I was more stressed than I think I've ever been in my life. It was just a nightmare. It was a nightmare. So surely that, on top of living with someone who's... The stress of living with someone who's... quite abusive. Surely that stress has.
Oh, your body, you would think so, wouldn't you? Your body,
on, yeah,
100%. I mean, it's something you'll never know.
Yeah. No.
But it's not ideal, is it? And
No,
it's definitely
it's
not
not.
going to play
No, it's not.
you know, it's going to play a role in that somehow.
But then you do get, you know, you get lots of people who are in couples, happy marriages, who, you know, the bowel can be born outside, the children's bowel can be born outside.
Yeah.
There's all sorts of scenarios, isn't there, with bowels and outside the body. And I mean, I saw quite a few weird cases of, you know, because she lived in the hospital then for her whole life. So
with Lydia, then you're at St Mary's.
Yeah.
You're having this diagram drawn out for you and explained as it possibly can be explained, and you're trying to, you know,
process it,
process this all. You've talked about being pushed into parent role in an instant. I mean, I know obviously you were pregnant, you're having this beautiful baby, but you know, no one knows what's ahead of you, but then but to have such pressure and heaviness and, you know, weight and worry in an instant, and all of a sudden you've gone from looking after yourself, you know, to next thing you've got to make massive decisions. What was Lydia's dad like at that point in time? Was he
was losing it. I don't think he could cope. He then wasn't turning up for meetings with, so I then was well enough to be discharged from the hospital. So Lydia had surgery. They found that, I think the measurements are that, if I'm right from memory, babies are supposed to have 300 centimetres of small intestine. She was left, after they untwisted it and most of it had died, she was left with 10 centimetres of small intestine, which meant that when she drank milk, it couldn't absorb into her body, and
because that's where they get all the vitamins from.
Yes, of course, all the nutrients, and she wouldn't have put any weight on. So she had, I think, 4 surgeries in total, but...
What were they?
He's very clever, Adrian Bianchi. So the bowel was growing still. He would... I can't, it's difficult to explain, but he'd kind of cut what bowel she had in half, and then he'd make another bowel with half of it and attach it to the half that was there. Does that make sense?
Almost like a graft.
Yeah. So he elongated the bowel. It's all obviously
incredible.
It's so amazing what he did. I think there was 4 surgeries, but because she couldn't absorb any of the milk that I was giving her, she had to be fed intravenously. So that was causing really a lot of pressure on her organs, on her liver especially. So these meetings were going on with Adrian Bianchi, and I had been discharged, and I would...
Where are you staying at this point?
At this point, I think I'm still with him. I think we may have got back together. But
not staying at the hospital though.
No, but that did happen. So what happened was, he wasn't turning up for meetings. I was on my own, really. I was actually coping with this on my own, and she at 3 months got, and I was at this point, I think I had split up with him and I had nowhere to go, and I'd applied for a council house. I just turned up and said, look, I'm desperate. I've got a sick child. I've got nowhere to go. And they said, look, we'll put you at the top of the list. You got the highest points that you could possibly have. Need to be near the motorway to get to the hospital. Because she couldn't spend a night at home. I'd not had her a night at home, but we got to the point where she could come home during the day, and I'd take her to my mum and dad's during the day. I'd pick her up, take her to mum and dad's, and then I'd take her back because she had to be fed overnight on TPN, which you probably know.
Feeding tube.
The feeding tube.
But you had to learn, there was sorry to interrupt, darling.
No, it's okay.
I do remember, it's funny, you know, what you remember, but I do, obviously, having Lydia home, and God, she was just beautiful, wasn't she? But
she was, yeah.
I remember you having to, for a while, there was almost like, there was quite a number of days that you had to practice and practice and practice with this TPM.
Yeah, to do it so I could bring her home.
Because that was about bringing her home then for, even if it was just 1 or 2 nights on the weekend.
Yeah.
And then you could take her back.
That was the goal.
That was the goal, yeah.
That was the goal, was for me to learn how to do the feed, the intravenous feed, and it was quite involved. It was quite complicated, and everything had to be sterile,
especially then as well.
And she ended up getting septicemia through that. That was nothing to do with I was still learning how to do it, but it's easily done.
And bacteria just getting through the tube.
Yeah, but also just the amount of feed that's damaging your organs as well. And she ended up with liver disease. She got septicemia at 3 months. That's when she lost a lot of weight, and they took her completely off feed for a bit to try and get her liver to recover a little bit. And she was yellow. And at the time, I didn't realise how shocking she looked. I was just
because you were seeing her every day as well, weren't you? Like it was, you know.
But I didn't realise how sick she looked. And then she got transferred to Pendlebury Children's Hospital onto a surgical ward there. Still in the hands of Adrian Bianchi, but I remember, I'd pick her up and I'd put her in a little car seat, and I might go and visit my uncle, and they were horrified how sick she looked, but she was my world at the time, so it was just me and her then. And so I ended up getting a house not far from my family, and I remember the council ringing me and saying, "We've got you this house," and
it was amazing.
It was
the house,
the most just beautiful views, fields, and just in a lovely area. And I just thought,
it was
thank
gorgeous.
you, God, for this. But she wasn't in it long because. Can we just go back to that, because the house, I remember you getting the house, and I remember some of my do you remember that
great memories listening to Key 103 Steve Penk blasting out, and me, you, and another good friend of ours decorating. We're all stripping walls and stuff. And but the excitement, I'm actually getting goosebumps. It was the excitement. The house was beautiful.
I loved it there.
Just like you said, instantly on the motorway, just a gorgeous stone, just a beautiful house.
I could just picture us there, her and I.
Just having such a laugh, getting ready, and the excitement of, because this was going to be a home, and, and during that time, I remember one morning actually being at another family member's house, and we had her. Me and my uncle looked after her for a little, it would have been an hour or two, because you never left her for that long.
No.
But you went out not antique, but furniture shopping to buy some stuff for the house, and there was just this hype.
There was
this really nice, welcomed,
with hope for the future.
Hopeful, brilliant. So, to the house, and that time period then of you getting the house ready. You said she'd been transferred
to
Pendlebury
Children's Hospital. Yeah.
And they'd taken her off the intravenous.
She came off temporarily to try and give her a bit of a break from. And funnily enough, her bowel was actually starting to absorb a little bit. They'd done these surgeries, and she'd got bigger, and she was probably eight months by this time. And we were in a routine. I'd got the house. I'd pick her up. I'd still take her to my mum and dad's house. We had some really happy days at mum and dad's. I've got a video of Lydia. It's probably about an hour long, and one of the nurses lent me her video camera, and I just remember for a few days just recording her, and I've got some beautiful footage of her in a little bonnet in spring. I can see the daffodils and the tulips in the background, and my brother's little squeaky voice before it broke, and just she was gorgeous. She was real, and she started laughing and giggling, and
And that's the thing you said. She was very yellow. The feed for a while just to rest.
They did temporarily. I don't know how long it was for, because I mean, obviously it can't be for too long, because she still needed that.
Yeah.
She still needed it but I was still feeding her. And you know, I remember there's one big memory that I've got when I went to, she hadn't done a poo. Like, because her bowels weren't really working, and I remember the first time she did a poo in a nappy, and I was like, Mama, me and my mum were jumping up and down with joy. Oh my God, it's working.
That's so massive, though. Yeah.
And it's really so weird that the bowel was starting to correct
And was it
itself.
not to be, but for anyone listening to this as well, like, not to be gross, but like we're all about talking about poo because it's normal.
Yeah.
Like when a baby does that first poo, it's usually like that greeny, just, you know, whatever. Was it like that for Lydia? Because that was her first.
I was so jumping up and down for joy. I can't even remember it. It looked normal. The fact that she'd actually done it was a massive step forward. It meant that it was working.
Yeah.
Her bowel was working. She was obviously absorbing something. And it was, you know, I just remember me and my mum just being so over the moon about it, and because it was just a huge.
I mean, that is one forward. Nappy you just would change a million times over, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Just to have that,
absolutely,
you know, something that we take for granted.
Yeah.
You know, well, they don't. They look for that in the hospital when the baby's born, and they have to have that first poo before they let them go.
Yeah. I had to take it back with me to the hospital.
You?
Yeah. I mean, I kept a log of everything every day, all the medication she had, every single bowel movement that she had. I mean, it's probably still in one of my boxes somewhere, I don't know, but I just kept a log of everything.
So at this time,
she became my life, my whole life.
Absolutely. Yeah. As she would be. So are they hopeful?
At this point, in hindsight, I don't think they were, no. And I think in hindsight, that's probably why the nurse lent me a camera. Because not long after that, we were told that, and by this point, I'm actually attending these meetings, you know,
on your own,
on my own. He would come and see her, but it would be, I mean, I can't even remember when. I don't think I saw much of him. But I was told not long after that she would have to go to Birmingham Children's Hospital for an assessment for a liver transplant. Obviously,
so explain why the liver was so damaged. Can you?
Yeah, so I think with all the intravenous feed that she had, it's not normal to be on it for that long. And because she'd had septicemia when she was 3 months old, it damaged her liver so much that it wasn't recovering, and she did need a transplant. Which is weird because her bowel was correcting itself, and she ended up with liver. You know, she had liver failure. Really, she had liver failure.
Yeah.
In hindsight, looking back, I realise now how bad she was. But at the time, you know, I thought that we were gonna. In hindsight, I think it was a mistake for them to. It was obvious that she needed a liver transplant. Why would you go and have an assessment? She was bright yellow. Her whites of her eyes were yellow. It was obvious to me. And they put her through some awful tests at Birmingham. I think we were there for 3 weeks in total. She was like 10 months at this point, 9.5, 10 months. I went with her to Birmingham. I was back in touch with her dad. No, we weren't together, but, you know, obviously we sort of came together at that time, because he obviously wanted to be with her as well. But I never left her side for the whole time we were at Birmingham. And it got to the point where it was obvious that she wasn't getting any better and she had to be put on a ventilator. And they wanted her to go on a ventilator because then she would jump the queue, or she would officially be on the list for a donor. I don't think she was actually on the list for a donor until she was ventilated.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
And what did they give you? I mean, you know, how can they give you a time on that? I mean, that could have been...
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't going to wait for them. I actually... so Laura Davis, who we've spoken about, who went to Pittsburgh and had a multiple organ transplant. I think she had liver, bowel, pancreas... Not sure. She had 2, and she...
It was the first the UK had ever seen in that...
Yes, but she had to go over to America.
Yeah.
And I remember, don't ask me how, but her mum, I knew her mum, Fran, and I remember ringing her for some, I don't know how, I can't remember, but I got in touch with her, and she was in Pittsburgh, I think. I think she'd just had her first transplant, or maybe her second, because she had two. And Laura Davis died. She didn't really recover from the second one, I don't think, but I said, what shall I do, Fran? I don't know what to do. I'm getting desperate. There's not a donor come forward and I don't know what to do. She went, right, I'm going to give you some numbers. Here's Manchester Evening News. Here's the da-da-da-da-da. And I just rang all the media outlets. I just rang all the newspapers. Next thing, I'm on TV appealing for a donor.
Because you're just desperate at this stage,
I was
now,
desperate
aren't you?
at this stage.
You
I
would
never
do
thought she'd
anything.
die. I never deep
You're
down in
still
my heart.
hopeful, but you wanted the best for her.
But I wanted her to get this transplant.
Of course.
It was her only hope at this point. So,
which as well, Kaz, can I say, which is just, I mean, obviously you're going through this horrendous stress, pressure, still recovering yourself. Like it's still, you've got a young baby, you know, you're trying to sort this house out, this home for her. You're now living in a different hospital. You've not really got this. Well, you haven't got the support from a partner. She'd never been home overnight.
Yeah.
No social media then.
No, nothing.
You know, there was none of that. It was literally.
Now
it's like it's, you know, so many platforms made so much easier. I'm not, you know, there's still, you know, it's still difficult.
Yeah, but that was our Google, wasn't it? Just the newspapers.
It was just word of mouth, telephone.
Yeah.
Yellow pages, white pages. The news. Literally the news. If you were good enough, you know, able to get on that.
I wanted to appeal on TV. I knew that.
Yeah.
I can't remember even how I made it happen, but it's amazing what you go into a different gear. You just go into survival mode, and you just. Although I never expected her to die, I was going to do everything in my power to get this organ, you know, that she desperately needed.
So did you contact any of these people, like overseas, and were you able to?
Which people?
Yeah, so the numbers that Laura Davis's mum.
I don't know how I got in touch with her, but I did. I remember speaking to her. I don't know whether someone must have given me a number, and because I remember we getting cut off, and I was ringing her back, and I was like, Fran, what can I do? And she'd already been through this, so she said, right, you need to ring this person, and that's what I did. Next thing, I'm actually on TV appealing for a donor. Don't even ask me what I said. I've no idea. I remember it. So it was on the news, and actually I think her dad was with me as well, as because I've got photographs of us in the news and stuff. It looked like we were together, but we actually weren't together. We were just her parents. We came together as Lydia's parents, and at this point she was there'd been a few days and nothing had happened, and so this is a memory that you know about this because I've spoken about this a lot, but my mum was there as well. She'd got the train to Birmingham to be there with Lydia. And I remember one of the resident doctors or junior doctor coming in to me. I was sat by Lydia's side, and she said, I'm sorry to tell you this, but even if a donor came forward now, she's too sick to have a transplant. She's just she's gone beyond the point of being able to have.
Is Lydia non-responsive at this stage? She
was on the ventilator, so she was completely out of it. But and I was holding her hand, and I wouldn't leave her side, and still.
How old's Lydia at this stage now?
10 months.
10 months.
Just actually 10.5 months, just over 10 months. And at this point, she said this. And I just thought, this is a mistake. This is not, in my head, I'm thinking, this is not, no, I'm sorry. And I remember her drawing the curtain again, telling me this, leaving it with me, walking behind the curtain, and she must have thought, oh, the curtain is a barrier to my voice, and telling someone what dress she was going to wear for the party that night. That she was going out that night and she was going to wear a little black dress. And it's funny what sticks in your head. And I remember listening to this and thinking, you've just basically told me that my daughter's not going to live. And now you're talking about what dress you're going to wear. And
with literally like the worst possible information you could,
that she's just given me,
and then just draws the curtain and then just goes into full.
I could hear everything she was saying. And at the time, you're not gonna.
Well, you're not. I mean, that you've got bigger fish to fry right there.
If
like
I could
bigger
go back,
battles.
I would have pinned her against the wall.
Yeah.
I honestly, if I could go back, I would have done so many things differently.
That's just horrendous.
But you're guided by what these people are telling you. These people are professionals.
Yeah.
We did a press conference as well for the whole thing. You know, I mean, there's things coming back to me now. I remember Sky TV being there, and just it was just all a nightmare. And then they had to take her off the ventilator, and I had her in my arms. Who's
with you then?
My mum.
Just your mum?
Me and my mum. That's all I can remember. I don't know who else was there. I mean, there could have been other people there, but I don't remember. And she was already gone, but she was in my arms, and I remember sitting with her for a long time on my own. I can't remember. It was a long time. And I just, it was...
Were you just like completely...
I was in shock.
Yeah.
I was completely in shock. It was such a whirlwind for 10 months of everything happening all at once, and things that I'd never come across before, and all these things that were happening, and then suddenly it's gone, you know, and I'm holding my baby girl, and she's dead in my arms, and it's I remember the next day, I remember going to bed and hardly sleeping that night, and then I got up the next day and I wanted to go and see her again. And I remember going to this nurse and saying, "Can I please hold my baby again?" And she said, do you know what she said? And
for our listeners say this, and I play this in my mind so many times, it's just...
I'll just go and get her out of the fridge.
Yeah, I just can't even...
No, at the time, you wouldn't sort of think... You stupid cow. Why would you say that to someone who's just lost a baby? Now, if I could go back, but I'm still in shock at this point, you know. I'm trying to process what's happened. I'm trying to...
It's just, to me, I'm sorry, my children age 18 and 13...
Yeah,
would know not to
of course.
say something. It's common sense. It's just the changing of one word. It's your absolute world.
Yeah.
Of course you can. I'll just go and get her for you.
Why did she have to say that? She's now put something in my head that I will never forget.
Ever forget.
Her and the stupid junior doctor. So, I mean, from then, I mean, I don't know. I think... I don't know how I got back from Birmingham. I don't know. I remember I went...
Where did you stay that night?
In the hospital. Yeah.
So you're...
At Birmingham Children's Hospital.
Beautiful girl. You've had to say goodbye to her. And then you actually stay where you've been staying that whole 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So I would imagine as well, obviously it's feeling... like your head would be in the clouds, completely surreal, but then that part hasn't changed, so almost your body's tricking yourself, your mind, it's not happened because nothing's changed in that sense,
because I'm still in the same place.
You're still in the same, you're in a hospital.
Yeah, I know. Well, I mean, I can't even remember how I got back to my mum and dad's, because I mean, Birmingham was an hour and a half drive. I don't remember who took me back. I can't remember. So I know I was with my mum, and we went, and Lydia was transported back to, I guess, Chapel of Rest. I mean, I don't even remember. I know we had her the day of her funeral. She was at my mum's house. I had her in the lounge. The day of her funeral.
Did she look well then? Like, did she look...
She looked like a doll. She looked like a little doll. She still had that browny yellow colour, and... Because I remember someone walking in and being completely shocked because it was an open coffin, and I didn't think to say, oh, just they just walked in, and I felt bad after that. But to me, the hardest part was I couldn't walk away from the grave after the funeral. I just couldn't.
I remember that.
It was so kind of final, and
that's what I was going to say to you. But I remember that.
Yeah.
I remember that like it was yesterday.
You were there at the funeral.
Yeah. But that you going home from the hospital, and obviously reality, I mean, gosh, I would imagine reality doesn't kick in for a very, very, very long time.
No.
But also, it's for all of Lydia's life, you've not been taking Lydia home anyway.
Not at night.
So again, it's
no.
I would imagine your mind's playing tricks on you because it's not out of the normal. It's not for you not to have her with you.
I know. So
exactly. You're thinking, like
you're used to being without her.
Yeah, it's not like you're at home and she's there every day and every night. You know,
you sleep on your own anyway.
Yeah,
at night. Yeah.
So you build. I would your mind and your body would just be.
It took me a long time to. Well, I mean, to be honest, it took until my son was born. I think that's what. I don't think I grieved properly. Because I got a job too soon. It's all happened again.
What was that? What was that? Those few days, like that, because it was fairly quick afterwards that you had the funeral.
Yeah.
Which is what we did then, didn't we? You know.
Yeah.
What were those? Were family rallying around? Were people organising everything for you?
Yeah.
Was that, when I say burden, obviously, but the organising and the things
I remember
like
all
you
my
just
family being there when I got
they
home.
all did that for you, and everyone came together, and it wasn't.
I remember my whole family being at my mum and dad's house.
It was during that time I got you a job with you saying, I think I need to do something different. And it did, again, you know, as much as we all loved you and we wanted the best for you, and obviously we loved and missed Lydia, and no one knows until they know, and they're not walking in your shoes.
No.
And also you're still really young.
Yeah.
And I'm like
27.
I'm a few years younger than you.
Yeah,
so I'm like
21.
I'm still in party mode. But obviously empathetic and understanding, and as much as you can.
If ever needed anything, you'd be there.
Yeah, 1,000,000%.
Yeah.
So, and I remember we all went out, all the girls, big group of us, and we were in a bar, and I've spoken to you about this before, and I'll never forget that look on your face.
Yeah.
And of course, you've had a couple of drinks, like not massively. I think it was like one of the first nights out.
Afterwards. It was probably about 8 months after, I think, that.
Yeah. And and you just didn't look right.
No.
You just didn't. You were a shadow of yourself, and that sounds like you're a shadow of yourself.
I wasn't there.
Lights were on, no one was home.
Yeah.
And I remember being in Sid's wine bar and like packed shoulder to shoulder in there.
I think I remember this as well.
And you'd gone to the bar and we were all sort of we were a big group of us, and then I've looked over to see if you were okay, and you're waiting at the bar. You're not looking at you're literally looking through everyone.
Just into space.
It was just noise, just white noise to you, I would imagine.
Yeah.
And I could just see it. And I went over to you and I just said, "Are you all right?" And you said, "No, I think I'm going to go on."
I was just going to say, I think I did went home, didn't I?
And
I was probably thinking, what am I doing here?
Yeah. And rightly so.
Yeah.
Like, the last thing you want is people banging into you, drinking, spilling drinks. And I mean, horrendous.
Well, how does the world go on? You've just lost your child. and everybody's carrying on as if nothing's happened. But
Yeah.
in your world, it feels like your world's come to an end.
And you want the world
How
to
could you
stop while
possibly-
you
yeah.
process all this, but
Yeah.
that's just not. You still got bills to pay. You still got, you know.
Absolutely.
And then you've got people saying, "Are you okay?"
Yeah.
Which
I mean,
is-
someone said, "Are you over it yet? Have you got over it?" And I just thought that was the strangest thing to say. Even then, I mean, who in the right mind?
Again, I don't. I don't, and that's, you know. Yeah, I just
Yeah.
can't comprehend that. I
No.
can't understand that.
No, but people just don't know what to say. Some people just do not know what to say, and sometimes you're better off not saying anything or just giving someone a hug, or I don't know, but because some things you can't forget. Once they're said, you can't forget them. Like the lady at the hospital and the doctor at the hospital.
Yeah.
In that situation, that very, very delicate situation, they said the most ridiculous things that are in my head and will be there forever. And so sometimes just don't say anything. Just be there for the person. I mean, it went very quiet after the funeral, very, very quiet. And that's when you really start to grieve.
A lot of people say that, don't they?
Yeah.
Like they say it's
Yeah.
because, you know, during that period of time, your mum and dad's house was literally like New York substation. Like it was, people were coming and going. It was a revolving door.
Yeah, that's right.
Parcels, gifts, flowers.
Oh, from all over the country and all over the world, cards were coming.
Arriving.
Yeah.
You know, just constant. And then
it would
afterwards.
say Lydia's mum, Saddleworth, and it would get to me.
Yeah, because everyone just knew.
because they all saw it on the news.
And then, of course, that all stops, and then
Yeah.
you're trying to process and carry on, and just being young still,
Yeah.
single,
Yeah.
you know, got this beautiful home ready, but except you've not got your beautiful girl with
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's what I was saying before when you know, when someone says to you, "Are you okay?" I think it's such a big question.
Yeah.
You know, obviously not to talk about my grief and where that, we'll leave that for another day, but
Yeah.
I almost ignore
know.
that question.
Yeah.
So I would imagine you would ignore that question, because it's like, I think just ask a smaller question.
Yeah.
How did you go today?
Yeah. How was your day?
How did you go when you took Matthew to the beach? Or
Yeah.
did you and Matthew go on that drive you were going on? Or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Not are you okay?
Are
'Cause
you
obviously you're
okay?
not.
Because it's just
Yeah.
like, where do I start?
How can you be okay? Well, so what do you say? Yeah, I'm fine, but
But
really,
you're not fine.
You're far from fine.
And I think that, you know, again, save it for another podcast, but that "Are you okay?" which I think is amazing. But I
it
just
is,
think it
but-
needs to be changed, because
Yeah.
I've personally done it many times. People said, "Are you okay?" And I've gone, "I'm fine," and I'm absolutely
Yeah.
crumbling on the inside.
Yeah.
And you know, you
Who
and I
else
have
can
had
you
many
say?
conversations,
Yeah.
you know, with that.
Yeah, we have.
So, beautiful Lydia, you're obviously moved into your new place that should have been yours and Lydia's.
Yeah.
You're there for, you know, you started a new job because you started at Barrett's,
It was
didn't
10
you?
months later. I
Yeah.
remember it because in hindsight, that's nothing, 10 months. I threw myself into this job selling houses for a builder,
Yeah.
one of the premier builders in the UK. And it was only 10 months. I threw myself into it, and I was there for probably 11 years doing that job.
You actually really enjoyed that, though, didn't you?
I did, but it was very hard. It was stressful. It was full on. And I suffered from major anxiety, which I've never really discussed with anyone before. But I mean, I'd be in situations with clients and I'd be having the worst panic attacks, and there was just nowhere for me to go. I just suffered really bad with
And
panic
no
attacks.
warning when they were
No.
coming.
I used to excuse myself and go, into the show house, or because I worked in an office attached to show houses. I just don't know how I got through that 10 years, I'll be honest with you. You know, most of it, yeah, we went to sales meetings. I got sales negotiator of the month or sales negotiator of the year nearly once. I came second or whatever, I can't even remember. But, you know, we had some great nights out, and it was I'll never forget it. But I really struggled with stress and anxiety, and I remember seeing psychologists, and it was all because I'd not grieved properly. In hindsight now, I realised that I hadn't dealt with it. I had all this pent up grief, and it was suppressed, and I wasn't talking about it enough because people don't talk about it, and so you're not going to really bring it up because it makes people feel uncomfortable. I mean,
So you're trying to protect them.
Yeah. So it's the inside, and then it that's how it manifests itself.
Of course,
it's going to affect you in whatever way. And with me, I had really bad panic attacks, so bad. I was never on any medication. I just dealt with it. I don't know how I did it. I put on this front. I put on this brave face. Everyone thought it was all right, but I wasn't. I was far from all right. And it was only until I got this new life in Australia in 2003, and I moved from the UK to Australia, and then 2 years later I had my son, and that's when it all hit me, because it was like history repeating itself.
Yeah. So talk about that a little bit.
So, you know, I'd met an Australian guy, and I moved over to Australia for him, and we were happy for a long time. We were had this great life, and you know.
Do you think at that time as well, moving, and I know we've spoken about this in depth before, but I think that's like an outsider looking in you with Barrett's. I think that masked a lot of things for you because it was a different crowd, different vibe, different workplace, different town. Like everything was different, so you could almost pretend.
It was very much like that.
Yeah.
It was, you had a uniform, you had to wear your makeup, you had to wear your high shoes.
No one knew your life prior to that. I mean, obviously you would talk about Lydia, but no one really knew your life. So you could almost leave that at the door, do what you had to do, and then take that home with you.
And then you just cried when you got home.
Yeah, horrendous.
Yeah.
So was it similar moving here to Australia? Because it's all hype,
similar.
Exciting.
Because you can almost reinvent yourself, can't you?
Yeah.
You're in a different country, but it was something that I didn't really talk about with anybody until Matthew was born, my son. So.
Did you want more children at this stage?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I know. I always imagined myself with a few children. I wanted a big family. It just never worked out.
Yeah.
You know, me and pregnancy just don't mix, because I didn't get preeclampsia with Matthew, but my waters broke at 32 weeks. So he was 2 months early.
You're like, oh, here we go
and
again.
I'm like, yeah, oh my God, what's going on? And
during your pregnancy with Matthew, everything's smooth sailing. But did you feel okay, or did you just have those understandably worried?
I was worried. I thought I was going to get high blood pressure, and I didn't get preeclampsia at all. I never got anything. I mean, I was stressed through the whole pregnancy. I was admitted at 22 weeks because they thought I was going into labour, and they basically said, go home, there's nothing we can do. And I held on for another 10 weeks. And I just remember one day, I was really stressed about something, and I can't even remember what it is, but I remember my waters breaking, and I was going to the hospital, and then again, I had an emergency cesarean again, but not under general anaesthetic. I had a
local,
an epidural. Yeah,
oh,
sorry, I was trying to think
yeah.
of the word. Yeah. And but then again, you know, he was taken away from me and put into the baby unit. He was on CPAP because his lungs hadn't fully developed, and I just thought, oh my God, here we go again. This is history repeating itself, and I thought he was going to die. Every single day I thought he was going to, and because I'd had a cesarean, I was doubled over, and I was being wheeled into the I'll never forget holding him for the first time and just having it. And he had white hair. They used to call him Surfer Boy.
Did that take you back?
Yeah, everything about it.
Yeah.
Took me back, and just the way he was so early but he just was completely he just got better and better and stronger each day. But I still was terrified that he was going to die. I couldn't be left on my own with him. I was terrified because don't forget, I'd had a child, I'd had a baby, but I'd never spent a night with her. I'd spent days with her, but I always took her back to medical help, to medical care.
Yeah.
So when he came out of hospital, he'd only been in hospital 3 weeks. When he was well enough, he's drinking your milk, he's putting weight on, he's thriving.
Yeah.
He was still only 35 weeks.
Yeah.
And it freaked me out.
Yeah.
I wouldn't let anyone near him. I wouldn't let anyone touch him for a long time. I think, he was born on the 29th of July, and I remember some friends of mine coming over in December, and that was the turning point for me. That's probably the first time I took him out with a bag packed with a bottle and everything in it. That was the turning point where I thought, well, actually, he's thriving. He's doing really well, and for a preemie baby, he never looked preemie. He just went from strength to strength. He was talking at 10, 11 months, not talking, but saying words. Yeah. He started walking at 12, 13 months. It was completely different. But at the time, I was ringing the hospital from home saying, he's not Ethan, he's only had 60 mils of milk.
Yeah.
I'd ring my husband and say, and he looked like the Michelin Man. He was so fat. He was massive.
He's losing weight.
He's not drunk his bottle. And I thought there was something wrong with his bowel. I just couldn't. And I ended up having a nervous breakdown. In hindsight now, I realised that I was having a nervous breakdown.
Came to a head, didn't it?
It all came out. I hadn't dealt with it, what had happened with Lydia. I just threw myself into my job. I'd now had a son he'd been born early like her and was in the hospital and all the same things. And I just couldn't handle it. And I ended up moving in with my husband's parents for about 3 weeks, I think it was. And then I realised, actually, I might have to go on some medication here. I'd never thought about it before. And I did go on some medication.
Were you seeing anyone then, therapy-wise?
Yeah.
Did you?
Oh, yeah. I remember, oh, my God, I was so bad. I remember actually my husband's cousin taking me to see a psychologist and me just saying, I don't know what to do. I can't cope. I just can't function. I just couldn't function. I used to just go to bed at my in-laws' house and just couldn't. And it wasn't like, what do you call it? Postnatal depression. It wasn't that. It was a nervous breakdown.
Chronic fatigue, exhausted.
It was chronic, but anxiety to the max, where I couldn't, it was just a very weird feeling of it wasn't real, the whole thing. I mean, obviously my hormones were all over the place.
And also as much as I would imagine you're over here in Australia, which is, so you've got the
away
support of your hubby and you've got the support of his family, but you haven't got your family.
And they don't know, they've not really experienced what I've been through with Lydia. They know about it, but
you're literally doing two lives just in that in itself, aren't
absolutely.
they? Because you're right, they hadn't experienced that.
They didn't know me then.
And
I felt isolated.
Yeah.
Even though there were people around me, I felt isolated. I didn't know how I was going to get out of that. I felt like I was in a complete mess and I had no idea how I was going to get out of it.
So how did you get out of it?
Well, to be honest with you, my father-in-law did me a favour, one of the biggest favours. It was without realising. I think he was finding it really hard, and understandably so, with me and the baby and me and my son in the house. How can you can't, eventually you've got to sort of go it alone, even though, I was with my husband. I wasn't going it alone because he was very supportive. But he had to go to work, so... they basically said, look, I think you need to go back to your own house and you need to start, And so what would he have been, about 6 weeks at this point? And I was terrified. I was absolutely terrified every day. I was ringing my husband and I was ringing the hospital. He's not eating this, and what about this? And they were getting sick of me, absolutely sick of me. I think everyone was, but I was in a mess. I went on some antidepressants for a while. They kind of helped, but then eventually I just came off them. And I just think day by day, I just gradually got a bit stronger. And I realised that, well, actually, I don't have to sit and hold him all day long. He can actually go in his cot and sleep. And I just didn't want to let him. I just was terrified that there was something going to happen to him. I thought he was going to die. And only because of what I'd been through.
Yeah, 100%.
And so, but, you know, then I was extremely protective of him, overprotective for quite a while after that. You know, he's probably... Well, I still am a bit protective of him, but I didn't really want people to go near him, and as he got older and I was taking him to the park and things like that, I probably was the parent that would run over if he fell off the slide or something, or if he's coughing and he's eating some watermelon, I think he's choking. I did do that for a while. I think it was only till he got to about 1.5, and I started to sort of lighten up a little bit, and then just gradually, I mean, he's just amazing, and he's just so strong, and he's now 19, and he's the most well-adjusted, independent boy. So
you've done all right.
I've done something right.
You've done all right. You have, babe. He's an absolute...
I've done something right.
He's a trooper, he is.
Yeah.
So with, another thing that you and I have mentioned, and I've shown my frustrations with it, is when over time, obviously, you've got 2 children, Lydia and Matthew, and having that, obviously understanding that everyone here, didn't know that part of your life.
No.
But then going through life with Matthew through school and things like that.
People ask, don't they?
And people ask, have you got children?
Is he your only one?
Is he your only one?
Yeah.
And what did you say to me that sometimes you felt like...
Yeah, well, I've lost friends through this, because when my son was... Let's say he was only 10 months old or 8 months old. I used to take him to swimming lessons. This stands out in my memory that, you get to know other mums, and you're there, you get the baby change, you're in the pool with them, and you get to know them. And the mums are saying, and I remember getting really friendly with this one mum. I think she had a daughter. And she said, "Oh, is Matthew your only child?" And I at the time would say, well, actually... He's my second, but my daughter passed away, unfortunately, in 1993. And she just avoided me like the plague after that. She'd go to a different swimming lesson, and, and this would happen all the time, in certain, I went to playgroup. I remember going to playgroup with Matthew, and I think he was about 2 or 3. And I remember him eating some popcorn. Could have been fruit, I can't remember, but he was eating something and he started choking, like proper choking. It wasn't just me being over, he was choking, but I panicked. I really panicked, and I was like banging his back and all, and he was fine, he came good. I remember years later bumping into this woman at the primary school when he was at school and saying, I remember you from playgroup. Oh, you were that mother who was thinking the son was choking to death. Starts laughing.
Read the room, love.
You know nothing about me, woman.
Yeah.
You know nothing about my past. Piss off.
Yeah.
And I just walked away from her.
Yeah.
It's not funny. At the time, it was extremely stressful, and I have no idea.
What's regardless of
She thought it was funny.
Losing Lydia, regardless if that's your child, and you're going to react like that because you think they're choking.
Yeah.
Then that's...
Well, I know parents like that who haven't been through stuff.
Yeah.
Actually. Matthew's dad is protective as well. He's like that too. We both were. As I think, you are, aren't you, as a parent? We all handle things differently, but because of what had happened to me in the past, that I was, and I'm not ashamed to say it, that I was really protective of him, and I was terrified early on that something was going to happen to him.
Yeah.
I mean, we're going to always worry about our children. I worry about him when he goes out now. He's 19, he goes to uni, he goes out with his friends. You know, he knows I worry about him, and he messages me, and he's fine. He's absolutely fine, but I'm never going to stop worrying about him, ever.
No.
My whole life. That's just how it's going to be.
Yeah. Yeah, well, God, if that's a crime.
Yeah.
You know.
But it got to the point where I realised when Matthew, especially when he was at school and people were, I'm not going to get any friends here if I start, I'm going to have to, so people would say to me, so for instance now, if people say, is he your only one? And depending on the person, because sometimes you can read them, can't you? And you think, actually, I think I'll tell this person. But most of the time, I say, yeah, he's my only one. Because I don't want them to feel uncomfortable. And,
but that's on them.
It is on them, but
that's on them.
It's something that they don't know how to react, and it's almost like you're not allowed to talk about it. I want to talk about her all the time, as you know.
Absolutely.
I mean, she existed. She was my whole life for that short 10 months.
100%.
And
how spiritual I am.
Yeah.
She's always around you she's a angel for sure. But I think maybe today we should make a pact on that. I think when from here moving on forward, when people say, and also Matthew's got a sister.
He has, yeah.
So you're not only squashing that, you're not squashing for a better word, but you're kind of silencing that Matthew's got a little sister as well.
Yeah.
A big sister, sorry.
Yeah.
So I think make a pact moving forward that, absolutely. I think if people are uncomfortable, people aren't going to grow unless they get uncomfortable.
That's
so
true.
if they can't make a conversation or at least acknowledge that, then that's on them.
Yeah, that's
it's not
true.
on you. It's you should be screaming it from the mountaintops. Like
I wished I'd done it years ago, because they don't ask as much now, do they, as they get older? But when they're younger, they do. Are you going to have any more? Or biologically, he's my second child.
I mean, it doesn't have to be always a sad thing either, because you talked about Lydia and your face lit up, and I think of her and your face, you just want to smile because that's what she had.
Yeah.
So, but thank you for today.
Thank you.
You're an absolute star.
Can I just say, though, you are probably the most selfless person I've ever known. I just want to say that.
Aww.
Because you're always there for other people. You always care about other people. You're always giving of your time. And you yourself have been through such a traumatic experience, and here you are again, giving and caring about other people. So I'm so proud of you.
Thank you, darling. Thank you. I it's you're a blessing to have in my life. I think obviously this podcast is about helping others. That's what I want to be able to do, because I think there has to be some sunshine that comes out of this.
It gets people talking about it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Which has got to be therapeutic. It's got to be helpful.
And I know so many people listening to this today will align themselves, unfortunately, with you.
I hope so.
Because they've been through such sadness or going through that.
Yeah.
So to actually see you, you still, like I said, it never ends.
No.
But, it's going to go for the rest of your days. But to actually see how you have had sunshine come into your life as well.
Absolutely.
You've had Matthew, and you've had a lot of great memories and good times as well. It's
absolutely. And with Lydia as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't all doom and gloom. There was lots of smiles and happiness, wasn't there? And rightly so. Yeah, she was.
Lives. Yeah.
She was. So thank you, Kaz.